with Screencast 5. So in every ecosystem, populations of different species are linked together in a web of interactions. Sometimes the relationships are competitive, and occasionally, again, they're cooperative. So, for example, you have mutualism, commensalism, and parasitism. So, for example, a mutualistic, we went over the flowering plant. Another one I looked up, termites. Termites have one-celled organisms living in their digestive tract. The one-celled organisms help a termite digest their food. Termite gives it a place to live. Mutualism. Commensalism, a shark, which doesn't really go deep into the water, up on top, attacks, eats its prey. Small pieces of that prey get loose and fall downward into the water. Smaller fish feed on the scraps. Smaller fish benefit. Shark is not either helped nor harmed. Commensalism, just for an example. All right, let's take a look at it at energy relationships within. Okay, so what you have here is the ecological pyramid, and there are several sets of words that you should know that go along with the pyramid. First of all, autotroph and heterotroph must be brought back. Okay, autotroph, plant life; heterotroph, everything else. So a food or an energy pyramid has, again, as you are looking, the word consumer and producer. So let's take a quick look at the word producer. A producer is a plant, all right? So an autotroph is a producer, and the producer occupies the largest and bottom portion of an energy pyramid, and therefore a food pyramid, all right? A consumer eats, either other consumers or the producer. All right, so heterotrophs are any level except the first level of the pyramid. So a primary consumer, eats the plants. Secondary consumer eats the primary consumer. All right, so you're talking about a predator to the prey. It's not prey here. There's no escape here. All right, so be aware of the word consumer and a producer. Those are used within pyramids, food chains, food webs. All right. Heterotrophs, can eat any of the following that you see in the bottom right. Herbivores, an herbivore, which is a producer. Consumers eat herbivores, all right? So herbivores are, in fact, heterotrophs, which eat the consumer. So the giraffe here would be your herbivore. I'll make a line going up. Your herbivore right there. All right. A carnivore is a consumer, that consumes just meat. So that would be your tiger here. And I guess you would be the omnivore, which would eat both. But they are all heterotrophic reactions. Okay, so a herbivore is not a producer. So don't look at this and say is. An herbivore eats producers. All right. There you go. Over to the bottom. Other interactions that don't often make that. All right. Is the scavenger and parasite and decomposer. So the waste and dead bodies of all organisms are consumed by decomposers. Decomposers recycle materials. They're often not part of food chains or food webs. They're not, but they are feeding relationships. All right. So then the decomposers recycle that can then be reused by producers. So break down waste. And this is a recycling here with decomposers. So two other relationships you should know. So a scavenger are consumers that eat dead organisms. So they're sometimes called nature's cleanup crew. Scavengers, however, are not decomposers. Dead bodies and wastes still have to be broken down by decomposers. So scavenger and decomposer, two different things. The parasites are organisms that attack and live in host organisms. So attack and eat. Parasites usually live on or in the body. Ticks, they live on a dog and feed on its blood. Of course, doesn't usually live on you, but it can feed on your blood as well. So these are other food relationships within populations in an ecosystem. All right. An ecological pyramid, therefore, represents organisms, their biomass, or the amount of energy. So any one of those three can be set in an ecological pyramid. All right. There you see, you need to be able to draw. So your producer, first primary consumer, secondary, you could have tertiary, you could have quaternary, you can go on, depends on what's within the web. All right, so there you can see an energy pyramid. Notice as you read up the energy pyramid, you have your producer, your primary producer here. Producer absorbs the sunlight, and by power of 10, the amount of available energy decreases as you move further up. So you can, in fact, draw a pyramid from this. So this picture as well. All right, why would you lose energy? Well, energy is lost to the environment. In human, about 40% of available energy is taken in you by cell respiration. You get rid of the other. Not very good cell. 4 reactions, and this makes up a food chain as well. All right, there's a food chain. You've got the flower eaten or consumed by the grasshopper, which is eaten by the mouse, which is eaten by the snake. A food chain. All right, there you see the pyramid again. All right, food chains and food webs. Don't forget, a food chain is a single predator-prey relationship. A food chain shows, I guess, what eats what. This is not a food chain you see in front of you. This is a food web, which is why it's generally tested, because food webs, I'm sure you have seen before, normally organisms feed on more than one kind of organism, because organisms normally have more than one kind of food source. Food chain diagrams are just simple. Food webs are diagrams that show more complex feeding patterns. All right, but notice all of the arrows emanate from the producers, which, if they're likely, are found on the bottom. And if you had a real complicated one, then you might get the decomposers on the bottom as well, or feeding back into. So each individual food chain. So for instance, if you're looking at this, grass, cricket, frog, hawk, that is a food chain. Grass, mouse, hawk. So producer, consumer, herbivore, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer. All right. Notice you can see within a food chain or a food web and pick out the amount of food chains within that web, even if it gets super complicated, where you have multiple producers here, tree, grasses. All right, moving on then. You can see food webs and food chains also are subaquatic, okay, under the water as well. Water food webs, all right. Bam, you got one that you can read there, all right. Stable ecosystems. There are 4 aspects of stable ecosystems. You need a stable energy source, okay? A stable energy source. You need biodiversity. You need more producers, more plants than animals, and then more consumers than consumers, excuse me, and then you need to be able to recycle. So these 4 maintain a stable ecosystem, all right? What are some important facts about biodiversity? I'm not going to read this list. This is a super important list for your notes. All right, bring it up there. Some important facts. What are some positives? All right, so I'm going to leave it there. So notice biodiversity, to the degree in which species vary within an ecosystem. More biodiversity, more stable ecosystem. Barrier to disease, more biodiversity. Source for genetic material. Source for financial, grow more, make more money. Food sources, life-sustaining, right? Negatives, species can be lost, natural disasters, human interference, which we'll cover in the last screencast, and removing even one species can bring on instability. So biodiversity is a great thing in a stable ecosystem. We want ecosystem to be biodiverse, not just one. All right. Here's a couple of examples for you, for yourself. I'll do now. All right. Well, lastly, ecological succession, and that would be what changes one into another. All right, the series of changes by which one habitat changes into another. Forest fire can cause ecological succession. Floods can cause ecological succession to occur. So, basic series of events. Here we go. So, succession. The first organism to inhabit is called a pioneer. Usually those are found on rock or on something. Very small living organisms. Very small. All right, primary succession, read along. Notice how the plants over time get larger and larger and more complex. That is what ecological succession, from really bare rock over here to a forest. You go maybe from bedrock to the small plants called lichen, to moss, to small grasses, to small trees and shrubs, to much larger trees. All right, secondary succession. All right, and notice at the end there, you have let's see, it's finally at the climax community. The last can't go any further. All right, even in the water, you remember that from last year's Earth science, sediment filling, to all of a sudden the water system is gone, and you have a new ecological succession from 1840 to 1990 in a former Regents question. All right, each community causes modifications to the environment. Modifications result in changes which make it more suitable for the environment, for another community. All right, and this most stable ecosystem is called a climax community. All right. All right, so we're going to stop here. We're going to pick up